is an enormous difference between public art and studio art, because public art is associated with a site. And of course there are different kinds of public art. There's temporary public art, there's permanent public art, there's and you can define it as broadly or as narrowly as you want, but for the purposes of public art funding that's generated by the city, and since a lot of that funding comes from projects, you end up with the site standing in judgment of the work for basically forever. And in the case of a film, like the Wapato film, that's a different kind of relationship. In the case of a permanent work that is associated with a building, the question becomes, well, what's the relationship between this permanent thing or set of things or treatments and the building and its use and its users and its ethos and pathos and history and so on. There's a whole set of contexts there that the work is associated with. With studio art, the context is generated by the artist and imagined by the artist, and that's a lot of what's marvelous about studio work, is the artist can imagine the context, can come up with some completely original set of issues to be dealt with in the work. In public art, a lot of the issues are proscribed.
Mm-hmm. So you basically tell the artist like what they have to think about?
No, absolutely not. That's not what I'm talking about at all. I'm talking about the physical reality of the site and the again, the pathos and the ethos and the use of the site and the users. These are things that the artist must consider. It has nothing to do with telling the artist what to do.
So when you say prescribed, what are you talking about?
I'm saying that there are conditions that an artist faces that are realities.
Based on the site.
Based on the site and its use and its users, and that they can't be ignored because they're there. They will always be there in judgment of the work. So the artist has both the burden and the luxury of having this high level of definition of the zone within which it's possible to work. Now, that doesn't mean in any way that any of these bureaucratic agencies that are helping facilitate this work are telling the artist what to do. Emphatically not. It's the artist's job to deduce how to make the most out of this situation. Just the way if the artist is doing studio art and has chosen to work in a rectangular frame, what can the artist deduce from that rectangular frame and from this box of paints and from what's inside that artist's head? Those are the conditions. The artist gets to imagine those, make them up. In public art, that's not the case. The artist doesn't get to imagine everything. The artist starts with a set of foundational realities that can then be built on. But that's not a compromise. That's liberating in the sense that you don't have to start from scratch. You get a lot of building blocks to play with, to start with.
And one of the building blocks that you can feel positively or negatively about is the committee that commissions the artist. And in public art, that committee is like they're the patron. But if a committee has 5 different people on it and 4 of them are very vocal in every imaginable direction, the artists have to struggle with that. And that's not there in studio art. You go in your studio, you close the door, you turn on your music, and it's you and your work. In public art, frequently there is a discussion about the work, and there's evaluation by the committee, and even sometimes veto power that the committee says, no, this is too controversial to spend public monies on. It's too it's not
How often have you
aesthetically
seen
correct.
that happen?
I've seen it. I've seen it happen many times when I was designing buildings and we had percent for art projects. There were times when the committee said, absolutely not. We have selected this guy, or gal, and we've seen the proposals, and this proposal is just not going to fly. We're not going to spend money on this. Good example was the Basic Sciences building, the headquarters of the medical school. I designed the building. We hired Larry Kirkland. He designed this giant head because it was molecular science having to do with brain chemistry. So you had these two halves of this giant head. One was black and one was white. And the black one was real rough and rugged, and the white one was classically sculpted and polished. And the dean of the medical school looked at it and said, you got to be kidding me. We can't put that out in front of our building for the obvious reasons. And it changed. The project changed, and I'm not beating up on that project. I'm just saying that you have to have artists who are willing to either engage in that and or accept those kinds of challenges to go forward. And some artists, and there were several on our committee who said, I just don't want anybody telling me about my work, because then I'm not an artist. Then I'm something else. I heard that logic more than once. So I'm just saying that one of the differences between studio art and public art is there can be an interchange, which Ed has figured out a way to make liberating, but some artists feel that that's constraining, and many artists sort of dropped out of the public art program because of that challenge.
Yeah, and it's not for everybody. You know, it's
Right.
You have to want to engage in process,
Right.
and you have to want to have the work be derived to some extent from the realities of the project. And it's not about personal expression to the degree that studio art is.
Yeah.
There's some personal expression in there, but it's also about making the site better for what it's intended to be and more powerful, and there are plenty of ways to make really fabulous, indelible, original art in the public realm, but the way into it is a little bit different than it is in
Correct.
studio art.